I just left a doctor who shared with me the thought that, you hear these anti-opioid crusaders who want to know, why do people have to stay on these meds for so long? And they have surgery and they're still on meds a year later, and they, as if you're supposed to cure pain, somehow come up with a cure. There are a lot of diseases that don't get cured, right?
There are hundreds of diseases that don't get cured. There are people who live lifetimes with incurable, severely painful diseases, Crohn's disease, interstitial cystitis, things that I've learned about just because I have an interest in this, that you can live 20, 30, 40, 50 years with these diseases. The only thing you can do for them is control the pain. There's no reason, why would we not want to do that?
And yet we're
taking their medication away from them and forcing them to live in torture in America in 2019.
You've read the stories, what it does to people's lives.
I've read the stories. I had a surgery that caused me to be undertreated. Fortunately, that's over and done with. I've had 8 surgeries in 10 years. A couple of them I went to lunch after, no problem. Certain states are trying to say, well, you only need 3 days for surgery or 7 days for surgery. Of those 8, there were 2 of them where I needed, they were significant surgeries in the back of my neck. You cannot take an NSAID. Michael Bloomberg, for example, says, the answer to opioid crisis is everybody should take Advil. It prevents your bones from fusing. So sorry, Dr. Bloomberg, you cannot do that in every instance. These decisions need to be made between a doctor and a patient. And what's happening is they're being made between a doctor, a pharmacy benefit manager, a pharmacist, an insurer, and the patient gets lost in that equation, and the doctor who really wants to help the patient is frustrated and has tons and tons of paperwork that they have to do just to see that patient days, maybe weeks later, get any kind of relief.
And CDC and DEA.
And the CDC and the DEA, who have no,
they're not doctors.
They're not doctors, and they don't know that person.
So give me a sense of Nevada physicians, because it's worse elsewhere. I mean, it's getting really bad.
Very much worse elsewhere. We are very fortunate. We really are fortunate in Nevada. The Nevada law is not as bad. It's bad for people who might break a bone or suffer an accident or have short-term pain relief needs. I've seen people for short-term relief. For example, I saw a 74-year-old woman with a broken hip visiting from out of state get dismissed from hospital, and her son took maybe 6 or 7 different pharmacies before he was able to get her pain prescription filled. Those kinds of things are happening. A colleague had a broken arm, and the quick cares don't want to fill these prescriptions because of the way the law is. But Nevada, we just saw the introduction yesterday of SB 187 that will correct some of that. And I think we can be a leader in this nation for compassionate pain care, as well as appropriate measurement of true drug deaths, because they're not all opioid related, as you know, and management of that.
Are doctors up in arms? Are they organizing? Because it's hard to get doctors organized, right?
It's really difficult to get them organized because they have so many patients to care for. You know, when you walk in, their waiting rooms are full. It's difficult to get an appointment. And they have so much paperwork to go through just in order to treat a patient. And now what's happening is patients are going to the pharmacy, and if they're lucky enough to get a prior authorization from their insurance company, once the doctor has made a decision on how to treat, then the pharmacy can reject them. And then the pharmacist will call the doctor, ask for medical records. And I had a meeting recently with 15 to 20 pain doctors, and to a person, they all had to hire an additional staff person just to deal with calls from pharmacists requesting medical records on each of the patients that they're providing pain medication to.
Seems like the pharmacy chains don't want to deal with it at all. They don't want it dispensed at all.
That was the big frustration, and the doctors were really expressing a lot of compassion for the patients and feeling that they were being left to wait days and days and days while people who have never met them, don't know their medical conditions, were just making them wait over and over and over again and making decisions about what kinds of medications they should take. And as I said earlier, certain diseases are not amenable to certain types of prescriptions, and they're just changing their minds about what they should take after the doctor has seen them. A chronic pain patient will have gone through several years of diagnosis, and then when you see a pain doctor, you will sign a contract with them that you're not going to go see other doctors. Your prescriptions are in a prescription drug monitoring program. These are good measures, I think. And they, basically put a stop to the pill mills and to doctor shopping, those things that years ago caused a lot of the issues that we saw earlier. Those are good measures. But now what's happening is we've just gone too far. The patients are really suffering.
It seems the actions on the part of some pharmacists are capricious. They do profiling of the patients. They blatantly share private medical information, and when anybody in hearing distance, they embarrass the patients who are asking for the prescriptions.
I heard a lot of that from the physicians that when you're in a pharmacy and it's a wide open place, they just tell the patients there, we're going to need to call your doctor about this. We don't think you should have this kind of medication. You've been on this too long. We don't like this. You can't,
Pharmacists, should they be making those kind of decisions?
I'm not that kind of a professional to say that, but I wouldn't want, after I've seen 3 or 4 doctors and been diagnosed and had the same medication for 5 years and it's helped me, why do I want a pharmacist who's never had access to my records before making those decisions for me? It just doesn't seem right.
Or overruling the doctor.
Or overruling the doctor, yes.
Demanding to see an MRI that you cannot read.
Or demanding that you get a new one when nothing is going to have changed.
Do pharmacists know how to read MRIs?
I had one doctor say that he offered to come in and ask the pharmacist to show him what it was in the MRI he was looking for, and the pharmacist said, never mind, I'll give him the prescription.
Because that's not their training.
Not that I'm aware of.
Across the country, of course, we've heard this outcry about opioid deaths, and you've seen the scare tactic. It's like a PR campaign. You know what these look like. This is what it feels like.
It is. Every single day you see the number 72,000 opioid deaths, but it's actually 72,000 drug deaths, and that includes methamphetamine, cocaine, and so forth. And the actual prescription opioid deaths, the CDC even admitted, was significantly lower than that. I think it was about 17,000. We also see in Nevada, 1 per day, when in 2017 the prescription alone was 10. So,
10 total.
10. That we could, not in Nevada, I'm sorry, that was Clark County. So, and most of the others had meth and cocaine. Well, across the country, there are 88,000 deaths just from alcohol, over 400,000 from cigarettes. So why is this a crisis when, now, if you've lost a loved one, it's a crisis, right? Right there. But the numbers are wrong, they're skewed, there's something behind it, they're repeatedly reported incorrectly, and I think we've discovered that in Nevada, and I think we're going to do something about it.
Well, you've seen the numbers of prescribed opioids go down, and you've seen what's happened to the number of supposed opioid deaths.
Correct. The numbers of prescribed opioids have gone down significantly between 2010 and today, and the numbers of drug deaths, overdose, have gone up. And just in the last few days, it's been reported that a flood of counterfeit oxycodone pills laced with fentanyl have been flooded into the United States. They're on the streets. If a person who is in serious, debilitating pain is denied their medication and goes out and obtains some of those pills on the street, they will die. And whose hands is that on, and why? Why are we doing this?
A lot of those people who are dying are veterans.
Absolutely. So I have metal in my neck that's been very carefully placed there by a surgeon. And these people who have fought for our country have metal throughout their bodies that has been violently and randomly placed by IEDs and other weapons, and they are denied pain care. And that is a sin. There is no good reason for that. We are torturing the people who fought for this country, and that is a sin.
So what can be done at the legislature? What is going to be done? What can be done? And where could we could be number one at something, right?
I am so encouraged by the introduction of this bill. What it tells me is that our legislators understand, that they have heard people, that they care. We still will have the prescription drug monitoring program. We still will have contracts with our pain doctors, which is great. I have an agreement that I'm not going to share that medication with other people, and so on and so forth. And basically the chains will be taken off of the doctor's hands. And if I break my arm and I go into an urgent care or my primary care physician, he'll be able to at least alleviate that pain for the first few days till I can see a specialist. And what will need to happen, though, is I think once the pharmacy board hears about what's happening with the pharmacists, I think some steps will be taken. That happened in Alaska recently. The Board of Pharmacy heard from patients and doctors what was happening, and they issued a letter to the doctors saying, unless you have a very strong reason to believe, you have to have a real probable cause that there's going to be abuse from this patient. If you have a person who presents and who's been taking the same medication for years, there's no reason not to provide that prescription, right? You have to strong reason to believe and then call the doctor. Don't call on every single prescription. I think once they learn that practice is ongoing in the state, something should be done.
So can you get doctors organized enough to the point where they write to the pharmacy board and ask, hey, send out a letter?
Well, here's the other side of that coin for doctors right now. There are billboards all over town, around town, that basically say, report prescription abuse, right? Doctors are under the gun, whether real or imagined. They are at risk of losing their license because overprescribing, not drug dealing on the street, not cartels shipping in from Mexico and China, but doctors treating sickle cell anemia and other seriously painful diseases are randomly being targeted for losing their license. And that's just not fair. So it's very difficult for them to write complaints and do things because then they have a target on their back. So it's a double-edged sword for them to do that. And I don't blame that, and it really does take an awful lot of time to, get involved politically when you've got lots of patients that need your time and attention, and then they go to try to get their prescription, they're denied. Pharmacist calls, the patient calls, the insurance company calls. So you've got to justify it with the insurance company, justify it with the pharmacist. Listen to your patient who's asking you what next. It's a pretty darn full-time job.
Doctors do not have to roll back the dosage, but they are doing it.
They don't have to roll back. That's the other thing. So the CDC guideline calls for a maximum, a proposed maximum 90 MME, and what the physicians are telling me is that's a morphine equivalent. Physicians are telling me that is not based in science. So the amount of medication that your body can metabolize is based on all kinds of things: your size, how fast your well, you know what I'm saying, all kinds of factors, and how long you've been taking it, all kinds of things. And to cut back to a random
One size fits
number,
all.
I don't know that there's any other drug or medication in the country that is regulated in terms of how much you can give to a particular patient, right? I I don't know. I think doctors know their patients and know what works for them, right?
I want to return to this as a final subject because we've been covering this for a couple of years now
Yes.
and trying to it's a steep learning curve to counter what seems to be a propaganda campaign about
Yes.
this medication and what it does and how it's administered. It CDC puts out these voluntary guidelines. It knows what's the reaction's going to be. It sees it unfold and hasn't said anything to retract the statements that have been issued in its name and the misperceptions that have caused pain for millions of people. It feels like a PR campaign. It really feels like every time we do a story, we see something pop up somewhere else.
I don't think there's a day that goes by where I don't see something about the opioid crisis. And when you really look at the number of deaths, again, I'll mention cocaine, methamphetamine, and meth is on the rise again. There have been calls upon the CDC by the Human Rights Watch and by 300 international pain doctors to do a bold reversal. There was a federal hearing the other day. Our own Senator Jackie Rosen was present at it, where several experts requested that these guidelines be revised because they are a held over the doctors' heads, and doctors are tapering people down. And this same letter and the AMA have said tapering people down for no medical reason is dangerous and can be torturous for people. There's no good reason to do it. The VA did a study that said tapering involuntarily, which they are doing, increases suicidal ideation and suicide. And we have seen an increase in veteran suicide. Is there correlation? Maybe. Is there causation? Can't prove that.
Feels like it's about money. Insurance
It most certainly
companies
does.
insurance companies don't want to pay for anything anyway. And now they've got a great reason to not pay for this. And then
Chronic pain is probably one of the most expensive things to deal with. There's no doubt about that.
feels like there's big money in treatment. Let's
Yes.
get them off opioids and get them into a treatment program.
Well, there's the rub, because other forms of treatment. Now, you're not going to treat certain things. You're not going to treat sickle cell, for example, with physical therapy. You're not going to treat many things with physical therapy or yoga and so forth. But certain things, there are alternative treatments for. My own insurance company took my copay for physical therapy from $20 to $75. So I think what's happening is they're seeing pressure to start covering alternative treatments like acupuncture and physical therapy. But those things tend to be, I don't know if they're more expensive or less expensive than the drugs, but they don't treat every kind of illness.
The drugs shouldn't be expensive. I mean, opium has, in one form or another, has been used for 4,000 years. You wouldn't think it's all that expensive. Doesn't have to be, but every other drug is expensive.
Insulin shouldn't have to be expensive either. The patent was given to the world for free. Yet people are rationing it, and it's costing people $700-800 a month.
Anything else?
That's all I got.
You're hopeful though.
I'm hopeful in Nevada. I'm actually excited about Nevada because states like Tennessee, the 3 days for acute pain, which okay, but 7 days for surgery. Just surgery. What that could include amputating your leg or getting a tooth pulled. I mean, it's insane. So Nevada was fairly rational, and now It just shows that we're intelligent and compassionate as a state, and I'm really hopeful that it passes.
You think the governor has an ear to this?
I certainly hope so.
Okay.